I'll do a screen share. So let's see now. Is this the screen I want to share? Om Jnanatimirandasya Yananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmitandina Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. So we are continuing with our reading and discussion of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. We are on chapter 18, the end, coming to the end of this journey, and we've just had a consensus. Seems like the majority of our group is happy to go to the beginning again once we finish this chapter. Okay, let's find Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18. So as I recall, we just got through the first couple verses, and then we had some extensive discussion last week. Although I don't remember exactly what it was about. Oh, maybe, I think it was on the difference between renunciation, artificial renunciation and actual detachment. Yeah, that here, that's the, yeah, I think we just got through this first verse and we had a discussion on that, which is, it's quite an important principle, because obviously what we're aspiring for is attachment. That's the principle of bhakti, of devotion. We want higher attachment. That's the attachment is the real principle in Krishna consciousness, and detachment is something that will automatically come behind that. So let's hear the first 10 verses again. You can hear Gurudev Sri Govinda Maharaj.
अथाष्टोदशोऽध्याय अष्टादशोऽध्याय मुख्ययोग अर्जुनोवाच सन्न्यासस्य महाबाहो तत्त्वमिच्छामि वेदितुं त्यागस्य च ऋषिकेश पृथक् केशि निषूदन श्रीभगवानुवाच काम्यानां कर्मणां न्यासं सन्न्यासं कवयो विदुः सर्वकर्म फल त्यागं प्राहुस्त्यागं विचक्षणा त्याज्यं दोषपदेत्तेके कर्म प्राहुर्मनीषिणः यज्ञदान तपः कर्म न त्याज्यमिति चापरे निश्चयं शृणु मे तत्र त्यागे भरतसत्तमा त्यागो हि पुरुषव्याघ्र त्रिविधः संप्रकीर्तितः यज्ञदान तपः कर्म न त्याज्यं कार्यमेव तत् यज्ञो दानं तपश्चैव पावनानि मनीषिणाम् एतान्यपि तु कर्माणि सङ्गं त्यक्त्वा फलानि च कर्तव्यानीति मे पार्थ निश्चितं मतमुत्तमम् नियतस्य तु सन्न्यासं कर्मणो नोपपद्यते मोहास्तस्य परित्यागस्तामसः परिकीर्तितः दुःखमित्येव यत् कर्म कायक्लेशभयात् त्यजेत् स कृत्वा राजसं त्यागं नैव त्यागफलं लभेत् कार्यमित्येव यत् कर्म नियतं क्रियते अर्जुन सङ्गं त्यक्त्वा फलं चैव सत्यागसात्विको मतः नोत्तिष्ठ कुशलं कर्म कुशलेनानुसज्जते त्यागी सत्व समाविष्टो मेधावी छिन्न संशयः.
Okay, so let's go and chant these verses together, 1 to 10. Arjuna Vacha Sanyasasya Mahabaho Tattvamiccami Veditam Jagasya cha Hishikesha Pitakeshi Nusudana Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Kamyanam Karmanam Nyasam Sanyasam Kavayo Vidu Sarvakarma phalatyagam prahustyagam chakshanaha Tyajam doshavad ityeke karma prahur manishinaha Yagyadana tapa karma natyajamiti chapade Nishchayam shrinume tatra tyage bharata sattama Tyago hi purusha vyagra shivida samprakirtitaha Yagyadana tapa karma natyajam kayameva tat Yagyodanam tapaschaiva pavanani manishinam Nitanyapi tu karmani sangam tyaktva phalani cha kartavyani timaparta nishchitam matamuttamam niyatasya tu sanyasa karmano nopapadnyate mohatasya parityagas tamasa parikirtitaha Lukamityeva yat karma kaya klesha bhayatyajat sakritva rajasam tyagam naiva tyaga phalam labet karyamityeva yat karma niyatam kriyate arjuna sangam tyaktva phalam chaiva satyaga satvito satviko mataha nadrishtya kushalam karma kushalena anusajate Yagi sattva samavishto medavi china samshayaha. All right. Well, Kanakalata, do you want to read those translations for us?
Wow, there are many people speaking English better than me, but I will try.
Your pure heart.
Arjuna said, Almighty Lord, slayer of the demon Kasi, I wish to understand the subject of renunciation, sannyas, and detachment separately. The Supreme Lord said, learned, enlightened persons who know giving up of a fruitive action as renunciation, and the giving up of the fruits of all action as detachment. Some philosophers hold that action should be renounced as imperfect. Others hold that action of the nature of sacrifice, charity, and austerity should never be given up.
Kanakalata, your reading is perfect, but there's some electronic sounds. I don't know what it is. Maybe your mouth is too close to the mic, or I don't know. It sounds like some rubbing of some funny electronic thing.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's yeah, the mic is in a good place.
Yes.
Okay, well, let's try again.
Some philosophers hold that action should be renounced as imperfect. Others hold that action of the nature of sacrifice, charity, and austerity should never be given up. It's better?
No, I hear too. It's static.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's okay.
Okay, let's just carry on then. It's okay. Sorry.
Probably it's better someone else to follow.
Okay. Actually, it hurts my ears a little bit. So yeah, I don't know what it is. That's a little strange. Okay. Okay, well, maybe I'll just start from the beginning again. Arjuna said, "O Almighty Lord, slayer of the demon Keshi, I wish to understand the subject of renunciation, sannyas, and detachment, tyag, separately." By the way, for those who aren't perhaps familiar, some of these ways of Arjuna addressing Krishna may sound a little odd. you know, like slayer of the demon Keishi. You know, it sounds a bit funny, right? To speak to someone like that. But in the Sanskrit, it's much more concise. And it's just, you know, it's like a name, you know, that has that meaning. So doesn't sound exactly the same in Sanskrit. And another interesting point is that, you know, all of these names, you know, because we see there are many different names by which Arjuna is referring to Krishna, and the other way around, Krishna is referring to Arjuna by different names at different times. And there are some specific reasons, you know, within the context why each particular name is being used. And in one of our Vaishnava acharyas, Vishwanath Chakravarti, if you go through his commentary, he'll give an elaborate explanation in each case, you know, why Krishna's use this name, why Arjuna's use this name. So Rishikesh, that name is fairly well known, means master of the senses. Then Keshi, this is not a very common name. In fact, I think it's the only place I've seen it. Keshi Nisudana, slayer of the Keshi demon. So I wish to understand the subject of renunciation and detachment separately. And so this subject we discussed quite extensively last week, right? The difference between just an external renunciation and actual internal detachment, which may involve actively engaging with the world. The Supreme Lord said, learned, enlightened persons know the giving up of fruit of action as renunciation, and the giving up of the fruits of all action as detachment. So giving up engagement in the world, what we just said, renunciation, but then internally giving up the results of your action, that is detachment. Some philosophers hold that, you know, again, some of these, I mean, I think everyone in this group is by now pretty familiar with our language, but I know for new people coming in, some of these things will sound a bit funny, like fruit of action, right? That would sound totally weird to your average person, like, what the heck are they talking about, fruit of action? But it's a way of speaking in Vedic discourse, right? The idea is that, you know, acting, that there's some fruit, there's some particular result, right? So result-based action that's based on the expectation of some particular fruit, some particular result. So this fruitive action. In fact, I think fruitive isn't even in the dictionary. That's in our Hare Krishna dictionary. Some philosophers hold that action should be renounced as imperfect. Others hold that action of the nature of sacrifice, charity, and austerity should never be given up. Right? Because there are some schools of thought where they'll literally, you know, their aspiration, their endeavor will be to enter this, you know, like samadhi, right? Where they're completely, you know, disconnecting with any sort of action, right? O best of the Bharats, hear my perfect conclusion concerning detachment, the quality of renunciation, since, O best of men, it has been clearly established that the quality of renunciation is of 3 types. Intriguing. Actions of the nature of sacrifice, charity, and austerity should never be abandoned. They must be performed, for they are the purifiers of the wise. But even these actions must be performed, abandoning attachment and fruit of desire. Apart to know this to be my perfect supreme conclusion. Because, you know, this is another thing, right? Someone may engage in, you know, good action, but it's with some mundane objective, right? And then that's, you know, this whole karma kanda section of the Veda is revolving around that idea, right? That you do good, you engage in these religious rituals, you giving charity and so on, worshiping various devas, various gods, but with the expectation you're going to get something in return. And that's grade one. That's one level of realization, which is better than nothing, right? But here, higher than that is to perform them for the sake of doing them, doing good for the sake of good. O power to know this to be my perfect supreme conclusion. Renunciation of one's obligatory duties is wrong. The delusion of giving up these duties is called false renunciation, or renunciation of the nature of ignorance. So, this is an idea which is touched upon in a few places in Bhagavad Gita, right? Like to give up one's, someone has some particular duty in society, as a whatever it may be, as a parent, as a politician or whatever it may be, as a doctor, but to give that up, just because one doesn't feel like carrying them out, that is false renunciation. There is room for giving them up if it's genuinely in pursuit of one's spiritual ideal. Right? There's room for it in that case, right? In particular cases. But it is not appropriate, for everyone. Depends on one's circumstances, one's level of genuine realization. So that's why, it's mentioned earlier, there's that, this idea is touched upon in several places, but for example, one example coming to mind is this one statement where Krishna is saying that even persons who don't need to carry out any worldly duty, they should still do so to set an example for others, right? Because it is the nature of common people to follow the example of great persons. So if they see that someone they look up to is abandoning their duty, but they may actually be doing it for a genuine spiritual pursuit, but then that's not helpful for someone who should be, carrying out their duties. That's what's appropriate for them at their level. So it's a trick. It's a very tricky thing. It's something that comes up a lot in our discussions, right? I find that this subject is coming up again and again. But I think just yesterday we were also discussing this point that, it's that this is mature spiritual practice, right? Knowing what's appropriate for who and at what time, right? If it's appropriate, all these things. We cannot, imitate others. That's the worst thing we could possibly do. One who abandons his obligatory duties out of fear of physical discomfort, considering them troublesome, performs renunciation of the nature of passion. Thus, he does not attain the fruit of true detachment. And I can also add here, this is something I appreciated so much about our Gurudev Srila Govinda Maharaj, is he was so expert, he was so precise in giving individual instruction to different persons. Like there were some cases where he would encourage someone in family life to give it up, that he had some, there was some, some service, that he wanted from them, and he encouraged them to give up family life. But I saw other cases where someone wanted to give up family life, and our Gurudev did the opposite. And I often give the example of this one occasion. I happened to be there in the room, and this was in Navadvip, and there was this one kind of eccentric devotee who had like 3 kids who were all a little wild, and they were like running around all over the place, and this devotee was very enthusiastic about he was printing a book, and he had some enthusiasm for this, and he asked our Gurudev for his blessings. Oh, I want to make this publication. Will you give your blessings? And our Gurudev, he could be so our Gurudev was often quite indirect and cryptic in the way that he would deal with people, you know, and very, he could be a humorous, and so Gurudev responded like with a very straight face, said, "I bless you to have another child." And exactly. I just love that so much. And I felt like our Gurudev was saying, like, you have these lofty ideals, you want to do this great service and that great service, but what's in front of you right now, you can't handle that, you know, like, take care of your kids, like, take care of your family, like don't neglect your family responsibilities in the name of your divine service to Krishna. You know, like that was what he felt was appropriate for that devotee at that time. But then I also saw other cases where Gurudev did the opposite. You know, so, you know, we understand it's a it's very individual. Everyone's at different stages and learning different lessons, right? Thus, we always need a guide, right? Someone, a spiritual guide, mentor who can help us. Okay. So one who abandons his obligatory duties out of fear of physical discomfort, considering them troublesome, performs renunciation of the nature of passion. Thus, he does not attain the fruit of true detachment. Or Arjuna, performance of obligatory works as a matter of duty, while abandoning attachment and fruit of desire, is renunciation of the nature of goodness. This is my opinion. I'm going to read this again. Performance of obligatory duties, their obligatory works as a matter of duty, while abandoning attachment and fruit of desire, is renunciation of the nature of goodness. So Krishna's describing this as real renunciation, that you're actually engaging in your duty, but internally you're removing your attachment, right? Your selfish attachment and expectations, but carrying it out as a matter of duty, regardless of how beneficial the results will be for ourselves, right? The wise renunciate who is absorbed in the nature of goodness and who has slashed all doubts, neither resents disagreeable duties nor is attached to agreeable works. That's wow. That's a big thing to strive for. And this is karma yoga. Krishna is basically describing karma yoga again here. Nishkam karma yoga, selfless action. And it's not a matter of what we like or what we don't like, what's pleasing or not pleasing, but what is our duty? And not that we are avoiding or resenting things that are personally uncomfortable for us, or that we are, you know, attached or pursuing, you know, seeking after those things which are pleasing to us, but simply this recognition, you know, what is my duty? And then carrying that out. That is what we're attached to. It's quite a high level to be attached, not to the objective experience, right? What's pleasing or displeasing, but to actually be attached to doing what our duty is. It's a very high level of evolution. Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he gives the example of Ramachandra, right? And I believe it's described like this as well in the Ramayana. That Lord Ramachandra, right? He's the epitome of Dharma, right? He's the acme of Dharma, and he just wants to know what's his duty, right? That's all. And so we're told, right? He was about to be crowned king at one moment. The next moment he's told, oh no, actually you're going to be exiled for 13 years in the forest. And we're told, like, when he received this information that his, you know, wicked stepmother, you know, she put this obligation, and we hear that his expression did not change. like the whole capital of Ayodhya, they were all, you know, joyously preparing for this installment, right, of Ramachandra on the throne. You know, all of the citizens are overjoyed with this. And then suddenly this news comes, right? Oh, no, actually, you're being asked to go into exile, right? And we're told that Ramachandra's his expression he did not blink. His expression did not change. So his attachment was to something on a deeper plane. So it's a very high level of realization. Okay, so we kind of did a combined reading and discussion there. Does anyone else want to add any thoughts to what we've just been through? Or any question or anything?
I really like the
Krishna here. Can you speak loudly?
I really like the last few pages or few things that we read about if we're ready to renunciate, right? And we've seen that through the history of our mott, where people will finish raising their family and maybe towards years into their marriage where their family's grown and they're ready to kind of separate and go on their spiritual path, and I have a really high respect for those devotees because they have that recognition of where they're at in life and what they can offer to Krishna and to our gurus and the responsibility and make that wise decision, because that's a hard decision and that's not easy, and it's a really strong awareness that you have to recognize that. So I really like this chunk that we just read, because it talks about, like you did, the example you said of, oh, can I publish this book? And you're like, well, go have another child. I give you permission. I owe your blessing to have another child. And I think that's a really good. I think that's really good for us all to know, because we're in this world where we have societal expectations, right? We have jobs and families and things that we've started, and I think in general, especially in the U.S., it's very common for newer I would say millennials and down generations to start things and not finish them, right? And they don't follow through, and it's just really starting to become more and more common. And so to have that strict lifestyle it can be more and more challenging nowadays. And so I think this is really important to meditate on and reflect on individually for everyone. I don't know if that all makes sense.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Nice. Anyone else want to add any thoughts here? Should we move on? Radhana Rupini, please.
Dandavad. In regard to renunciation, we have to be so careful that we don't do false renunciation, because when you renounce falsely, meaning you're so gung-ho and then you're going to give everything up, and you're not even ready for that. The only thing it does is it hardens your heart. Renunciation will harden your heart. So I think that the true renunciation is renouncing, all the enjoyment in this world, the pulls of the five senses. If we can try to put those under control, then we are a renunciate no matter what ashram we're at. So that's important, but I find that it has to come in a natural manner, like you were saying, Didi. So the more you serve, the more you have relationship, and the more you become attached. So the more you serve Krishna or your spiritual master or other devotees, the more you'll have a relationship with them. And from relationship comes attachment. So that's a really good thing to do if you want to become more renounced. It's not to focus on the renounce, but to focus on the service and the attachment towards Guru and Krishna and devotees. Then that way, naturally, the renunciation happens, naturally. And yeah, it's hard to be a yogi in the world, doing your work, whatever you have to do, and still have this sattvic way of life. Especially nowadays, I feel bad for the younger people. It must be really hard to be young now, But I just wanted to say that. Yeah.
That was beautiful. Thank you for sharing, Didi. And I appreciate how you emphasize the value of personal relationships, right? Because, and this was something our Gurudev talked about too, like, because ultimately our heart has to be captured. Like, if this is really going to be something real, it has to come from here, from the heart, not from the brain or some mental thing or whatever, right? But it has to come from the heart. And what really captures us is those personal relationships. So developing personal relationships with Guru, with the devotees, that really helps us in that regard, and strengthening our attachment to Krishna consciousness. So
also, I think too, like just living a sattvic life, like we're following 4 regular principles: no meat eating, no intoxication, no illicit sex, and no gambling. And maybe in the beginning that's quite difficult for some people, but then afterwards, I'm telling you, it's just like second nature. But even just that is an austerity in this world right now.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't even realize it's an austerity, but so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. In our modern culture, so many things have become normalized, actually, which aren't normal. And everything's just on display and everything's available so easily. So yes, it's Kali Yuga in a word. Anu Krishna wants to say something again.
Edie, based on what you just said, I agree with you. I mean, just being a devotee of like second initiation, and I'm a mother and a partner, and I'm in school, and just being having those baseline responsibilities as a devotee is hard enough, like for me, and I tell, when Vishaka Didi is here, I was like, I'm a horrible devotee, but I don't drink. I don't, I don't, I'm vegan, for over a decade now. I do all of these things and I work really hard, but I have this idea of like, oh, I'm not a good devotee. I'm so horrible devotee. But I think just having those baseline standards in today's world is really difficult and challenging. And so adding even further a renunciation on top of that, like Vishaka said, and it's and I think another, maybe you said this as well, is not easy for younger generations, right? It's a whole different world to step away from the norms that we're surrounded by, because we hang out with friends that are not devotees, and just having wine or something is just normal. It's not looked down upon, it's not frowned upon, it's not, oh, they had a glass of wine, that's not okay. That's not the idea, that's not the vision that most people have. And so that's something that as devotees we have to recognize and have that awareness, and step away from societal norms that we've been brainwashed our whole lives to follow. And I think that in itself is a lot of work, and to carry that with us each and every day, to school, to work, to our families, to people, to our friends that are not devotees, to carry that that image and that representation with us wherever we go is more challenging than I think most people realize. And so, you know, to all the devotees that do carry that is like very admirable, right? It's something to glorify, because that is it's very precious, and it's a very like auspicious way of living. So that's all I have. You can have your
Can I say something to her, Vishaka? Is that okay, Didi? The first thing I wanted to say is humility is a crown jewel of the devotees. And it's very obvious that you're having humility. You know, once somebody becomes introspective and sees how far they have to go. I tell you, I was just speaking to somebody and I was saying, God, I'm just so far behind, you know. But it's a good sign that humility. And the other thing is that what comes to my mind is those who see me in all things and all things in me are never lost to me, nor am I ever lost to them. And that's a Bhagavad Gita verse. And so everywhere you go, if you just see Krishna in everyone's heart, then it really helps a lot, you know. And you never push on anybody anything they don't want, but them seeing you just the way you live, you know.
Mhm.
Believe it or not, that's the biggest way you can tell people about Krishna, is for walking the talk.
Thank you, Didi.
I raised 4 kids.
I thank you for that, and I completely agree. And it's something that I try to remind myself all the time, is just walking the talk is a lot to do, and it's enough, you know, for a lot of us. That's a lot to ask, and that's a lot to uphold and to be committed to. And I have to remind myself that, hey, I'm doing it, you know. I don't feel like I'm the, you know, I still am the baby devotee, and I will be for the rest of my life. I am a baby devotee. That's what I call myself.
But you have the best association in your house, Didi.
Oh, I know. Oh, you're telling me. You're telling me. All right. Do you have anything you want to say? Or?
Yeah, a little bit.
I'm gonna pass this along to Deval Krishna here.
Dandavats, everybody. I just wanted to share appreciation for the sentiment, the idea of renunciation in this lineage, in this conception, isn't, you know, I'm so grateful, I guess, that it's not like one of self-serving nature, but that it just is there to bring us closer to that conception of seeing Krishna in everything that we do, and that the renunciation tends to happen like internally, not with like the objective like action that we're doing. Just coming from another conception, you know, like the Shivite Shankar kind of stuff. It was convoluted as to why we would want to renunciate, what we were renunciating, you know, to gain peace and tranquility and enlightenment. But this is actually renunciating just to be closer to that, to our Lord in every moment.
Renunciation for the sake of renunciation.
Yeah, not renunciation for the sake of renunciation. So it makes things really easy, you know, in that regard, easier rather, not things easy, but yeah, so just really beautiful. And thank you so much for sharing everything.
Thank you, Anu Krishna and Dulal, for sharing. And I'll just add on to that, you know, that it is, you know, we have to express appreciation for those who are living in an environment, you know, that is not supporting. It's different when you're living in a community, right? You're living in a temple, or you're living in a tight-knit, you know, devotional community. It makes it so much easier. That's like the norm, right? That was a whole different world, like living in a Hare Krishna village, right? Then it makes it a lot easier because the environment is supporting you. So yeah, so kudos to all of you out there who are, you know, like Anu Krishna and, you know, others who, you know, you're striking it out like that, and you're maintaining your principles.
Independently. Is the word independently without a village.
Without the Hare Krishna village. Okay. All right. Well, any other thoughts from anyone, or should we carry on with the reading? I like this comment from Marie. It's important to be running toward, not running away. When running toward spiritual growth with everything you are, eventually there aren't hands left to grasp for anything else. Nice. Okay, should we go back to our reading then? And welcome to those of you who've joined, Steve and Narayani and Ramananda Prabhu, Priyahita. Welcome everyone. Okay, we'll go back to our, have a little more reading then. So we are going to go through verses 11 to 20 now.
नहि देह भृता शक्यम त्यक्तुं कर्माण्यशेषतः जस्तु कर्म फल त्यागी सत्यागित्वविधीयते अनिष्टमिष्टं मिश्रं च त्रिविधं कर्मणः फलं भवत्यत्यागिनां प्रेत्य न तु सन्न्यासिनां क्वचित् पंचैतानि महाबाहो कारुणानि निबोध मे सांख्ये कृतान्ते प्रोक्तानि सिद्धये सर्वकर्मणाम् अधिष्ठानं तथा कर्ता करणं च पृथग्विधं विविधाश्च पृथक् चेष्टा दैवं चैवात्र पंचमं शरीर वाङ्मनोभिर्यत् कर्म प्रारभते नरः न्याज्यं वा विपरीतं वा पंचैते तस्य हेतवः तत्रैवं सति कर्तारमात्मानं केवलं तुजा पश्यत कृतबुद्धित्वात् न सा पश्यति दुर्मतिः यस्य नाहं कृतो भावो बुद्धिर्यस्य न लिप्यते हत्तापि स इमान् लोकान् न हन्ति न निबध्यते ज्ञानं ज्ञेयं परिज्ञाता त्रिविधा कर्म चोदना करणं कर्म कर्तेति त्रिविधा कर्म संग्रह ज्ञानं कर्म च कर्ता च त्रिधैव गुणभेदतः प्रोच्यते गुणसंख्याने यथावत् शृणुतान्यपि सर्वभूतेषु येनैकं भावमव्ययमीक्षते अविभक्तं विभक्तेषु तज्ज्ञानं विद्धि सात्विकम्.
Okay. Okay, so we can chant those verses together. Verse 11. Nahi dehabrita shakyam tyaktam karmanyasheshatah tastu karma phalatyagi satyagitya anishtam ishtam ishrancha chividam karmana phalam bhavatyattyaginam pritya natu sanyasinam kvachit panchaitani mahabaho karanani nibodhame sankhya kritanti bhuktani siddhaye sarva karmanam adhishtanam tata karta karanancha pritagvidam vivirascha pritagchishta daivanchaiva cha panchamam sharira vanmanubhiryat karma parabhate naraha nayam va viparitam va panchaite tasya hetavaha tatraivam satikartaram atmanam kevalam tuya pashyatya krita buddhitam nasa pashyati dormati yasya naham krito bhavo buddhiryasya na lipyate atvapi saima lokan nahanti na nibadyate yanam gyeyam padikyata chiveda karma chodana Karanam karma karteti, jivita karma sangraha, yanam karma chakartacha, chidaiva guna vedataha, Uchate guna sankyane, yatavakshinu tanyapi, sarva bhuteshu yenaikam, bhavamavyayamikshate, avivaktam vivakteshu, tajyanam vidhi satvikam. All right. I'll just read those. It is not possible for the embodied soul to fully renounce actions. However, one who renounces the fruits of his actions is a true renunciate. This is the thing, right? It's practically impossible to give up action in the first place, right? After death, the three kinds of fruits of action, good, bad, and mixed, accrue to those who have worldly desires, but never to those who are renounced. So this is saying, right, that karma is actually based on the internal consciousness, right? It's not based on what you've actually done, but karma comes as a result of the internal mindset with which that action was carried out. And Krishna is about to give a very extreme example of that. Hold on to your seats. O mighty hero, know from me of the 5 causes of the accomplishment of all actions as described in the conclusive teachings of the scripture known as Sankhya or Vedanta. All actions are accomplished by these 5 causes: the body, the performer, and by performer is meant ego, a knot of spirit and matter. So this ego, right, ahankara in Sanskrit, it's the most subtle and most binding of the material energy. So this is a nice way of describing a knot of spirit and matter, because it's the most subtle and insidious material element which is binding us to this world. And you can't even really, it's very difficult to even perceive it, right? But it's that very sense of mundane identity and conceptions of ownership, right? The word ahankar like means I do, right? And that whole world of I, me, and mine is being indicated by that. And this is the most subtle thing that's binding us. Very, very difficult to overcome. So the body, the performer, the instrument, the various endeavors, and by instrument is meant the senses, the various endeavors, and the divine, the super soul. And so, this is quite a helpful verse. We'll hear it quoted sometimes by gurus, because it's kind of breaking down, it's deconstructing this idea that we are the doer, right? Like one of the causes of the false ego is to kind of amplify our own existence so that we see ourselves as the center of everything. Like we're so, fixed, like with tunnel vision on our own small worlds, right? And then this ego of being the doer, right? Being the accomplisher, and therefore being the owner of whatever you've accomplished, that comes in, right? So this verse, there are a couple verses which are helpful in this regard in Bhagavad Gita, and this is one of them, like they help to deconstruct this idea. And so this verse is kind of like helping us to zoom out a bit and to see, like, your experience, your world, your accomplishments, they're not possible just by you alone, right? It's a complex combination of so many different factors which are allowing any action to take place, right? So, something as simple as picking up, your water bottle, right? There are so many forces. Okay, you have the will to do that, but is your brain, are your muscles, are they cooperating with that, right? Then there are so many factors in the environment. There's the law of gravity, right? And in the background of everything, of course, is the divine will, right? The divine energy, which is allowing everything to take place. So our ego causes us to, as I said, amplify our activity, our experience. So we just see the I and everything that we do, but this is helping us to see, no, there are so many intricate, interconnected factors that are going on and enabling anything to take place. So it's, it's a complex thing. And then I mean, this verse is helpful for many things, also when it comes to trying to understand why certain things happen, right? It's complicated, right? There's so many factors involved. There's individual karma, there's also collective karma, right? If you move to a particular community or a particular country, you're implicating yourself in the collective karma of that zone, right? By your association, you're also involving yourself. That's one reason why we're careful with our friends, right? Are you ready to take on some of their karma? That's just inevitable, right? Are you ready to get tangled up in someone else's web of karma? This is why in Hinduism, like, there's so much emphasis on astrology, right? Like, with marriages, there's so much consideration of these things, right? And of course, as we're always emphasizing, we're interested in bhakti. We're not obsessing about karma too much. Karma is just something that's going to play out. But we also have to realize our human limitations, right? And it may not be helpful for us to be connected with someone who has very heavy karma. Can we digest that, right? So it is something to consider, right? Whether lawful or unlawful, whatever action a man performs with his body, mind, or speech is caused by these 5 elements. But an ignorant person who sees only himself as the doer does not actually see, due to his impure intelligence. He who is free from egoism, aversion to the absolute, and whose intelligence is not implicated in worldly action, even if he kills the entire world, he neither kills nor is he bound by action. So this is a very heavy statement. And we have to understand, it's not that Krishna is condoning such a thing, but he's making a very extreme example to capture our attention, right? That to emphasize this point, that everything depends on our consciousness. And even if we did something apparently, so wicked, if that genuinely came from a place of duty and there was no like internal attachment, there was no evil desire attached to that, then there wouldn't be any reaction to us. But everything everything depends on our consciousness. Karma is created by the consciousness of individual attachment. So this is an extreme example. These 3 are the driving force of action: knowledge, the knowable, and the knower. These 3 are the constitution of action: the instrument, the action, and the performer. In the Sankhya scripture, knowledge, action, and the performer have each been classified according to the 3 modes of material nature. Now hear of these from me. So this is, as I understand, this is quite a big, there's a section in the scripture where there's a big discussion on this. The Sanskrit is here, jnanam, gyayam, parigyata, the knower. So knowledge, the knower, and the knowable. There's a whole discussion on this. And this Sankhya scripture, it's literally, Sankhya means something like counting. And it refers to this approach towards liberation, where there's this kind of dissection of the mundane experience, mundanity, and making this like analysis, distinction between matter and spirit, right? In the attempt to try and overcome matter, right? To make and you'll hear this phrase, neti, 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 that it means like, it's not that, it's not that, it's not that. And the idea is that by eliminating what what it is not, then you'll attain what is. By eliminating what is mundane, by eliminating matter, we will attain what is spirit, right? And so there are so many different expressions of matter, both subtle and gross, both tangible and untangible, right? So it's a whole intricate world, right? And so this is one approach, and in pursuit of moksha, in pursuit of liberation, there are many different pathways that are outlined in the scriptures, and so this Sankhya is one of them. And you'll see that at the beginning of Gita, there's also, in Gita actually, not just in the very beginning, but particularly in that chapter 2, in our edition of Gita, it's called Sankhya Yoga, and it's where this clear distinction is being described between the body and the Atma. What is the difference between the body and the soul, right? And and so there's some elaborate discussion, or not so elaborate, but some expanded discussion on what is the nature of the soul, right? So this is helpful. It's not that we totally reject Sankhya, this type of analysis. It can be helpful with the end of devotion, right? As Dulal Prabhu was saying, right? Not renunciation, just to attain this zone of, nothingness, just to renounce, but we want renunciation that is supportive of higher attachment and devotion, all these things. Okay, so that knowledge by which the one imperishable and undivided principle, my superior divine potency, is seen to be present in all the diverse living beings, is to be known as knowledge of the nature of goodness. That knowledge by which the one imperishable and undivided principle, my superior divine potency, is seen to be present in all the diverse living beings, is known to be knowledge of the nature of goodness. Okay, so we're going to kind of end on a cliffhanger here, because Krishna's going to continue with other types of knowledge. So we'll hear next week about what is knowledge in the nature of passion and ignorance. So we're just about at the end of our time. Does anyone want to add any thoughts before we close for today? Dulal Prabhu wants to say something.
Verse 17, I felt like the inverse was really clear in that, also in what spirit are we doing good works or things that are necessary, or just our daily activities, with that passion, that anger. I see that so much just out and about here in the city that I'm working in and staying in, that we're all doing and going, and even behind our ideas and our own to self-betterment or to achieve this or that, that there can be not so much awareness around what spirit that we're doing these works in. So I appreciate verse 17 in that regard. And I think you spoke also about the neti, not this, not that, not that.
Was that something you discussed in your ashram before?
Yeah, and it was like, it's really great because in a way, it was such a great verse 14, the performer, which is a knot of spirit and matter. It's such a clear, easy to digest and understand kind of definition of that. I remember when I was discovering that, kind of seeing it like, oh my gosh, what is that? It's just this almost like, I thought I could refer to it as like a ghost of just our habits and the things that we've taken in to keep us surviving and what we thought was thriving based on standards and stuff. So it's like that's me. But this is so much clearer, that knot of spirit and matter. And so for us to find, or to take the us out of us, finding this path or the way forward amidst what we are acting in, the mundane laws, right? When there's like there's like a super, there's something beyond, there's other laws that are well above it. Was that the approach was to not this and not that, because we are only in this way of the not that either. So it's like, it was, so I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but it always clicked with me to find out what wasn't the thing, because I couldn't name what was the thing, because I myself was a fallacy, you know, in a way. There's a little bit of nonsense stuff there, but anyways, yeah. So I really appreciate verse 14 that they're not of. So yeah.
Nice, I like that. And then you found Krishna.
And then I found Krishna, and it's like all done.
Now I know what the thing is.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Right.
Okay, well, it's been a wonderful, lively, interactive meeting as always. Great to see all of you. I see Steve has turned on his camera. Hello, Steve. Good to see you, Ramananda Prabhu.
Dandos Vishaka Didi, it was nice.
All of you. Well, thank you all
very much for today.
participation. Thank you, Scarlett. Thank you, all of you. Have a beautiful week, and I'll look forward to next time. Bye, Gurudev.
Yeah, Guru Dandos.
Bye.